Welcome to the Healthy Aging Community Alliance Science Club. In this short presentation, we're just going to run through what is scientific peer review and what being a part of the club entails. The Healthy Aging Community Alliance acknowledges and pays respects to the traditional custodians of the land and waters upon which we are located. We acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and recognise their continuing connection and responsibility to country. My name's Dr. Catherine Broadhouse, and I'm a medical physicist and science communicator. And in my research career, I've used magnetic resonance imaging to investigate different diseases and pathologies. Early on in my career, I was using MRI to investigate the cardiovascular system in premature infants. So I was using MRI to look at how the heart works and how blood flows around the body in babies who are born premature. I was lucky enough to work in a hospital that had an MRI scanner on the neonatal unit. I would work with the neonatologist to image these babies and understand where the blood was going within their bodies, so that the doctors could then come up with a targeted treatment approach for each baby. I then moved from cardiac research into neuroscience, where I was interested in how the brain changes with age-related diseases. Myself and my team were specifically interested in how interventions such as brain training or exercise could slow down or even stop the effect of dementia. We would then scan people's brains in the MRI machine to track the changes over time and during the course of the intervention. We could use MRI to see the structural and the functional changes in the brain. I have loved working in both the cardiac and the neuroscience research fields. However, when I was working in the cardiac field, the audience and the beneficiaries of my research were very different. So the audience of my research, the people who I was writing up my results for, were the neonatologists, and the beneficiaries were obviously the babies. And this meant, because I was working alongside the neonatologists, that our findings could be translated into practice very quickly. However, when I was working in neuroscience and dementia research, the audience and the beneficiaries of my research were the same. They were the elderly population in our communities. As we all know, translating research findings outside of the medical and scientific fields can be very, very slow. It can often take decades for research findings to reach the general population and actually help. This frustration with the speed at which a lot of science gets translated into practice is why I decided to sidestep out of research and into science communication. I now work for the Healthy Aging Community Alliance. The Healthy Aging Community Alliance was set up by a bunch of healthy aging researchers like myself at UniSC who wanted to connect with and engage more with the community that we work for. Our aim at the Healthy Aging Community Alliance is to bring researchers and the community closer together so that you can find the latest community and research projects that suit your needs, and we can hear from you about the research that you want us to do. One of the ways in which we aim to do this is to publish a healthy aging newsletter, and this is where the Community Science Club comes in. We would like you to review our articles before they get published, to make sure that they are full of informative, accessible and engaging scientific information for our community. I'll talk again about the newsletter later, but for now we're going to look at this review process in more detail. We are now going to look at what is scientific peer review. So every day scientists are collecting data and running experiments in laboratories, in the field, in communities and even in space. After we have collected and analysed all the data, we need to share our work and findings with our colleagues and other scientists in the field, and we do this by publishing in scientific journals. Once we are happy with our findings, we write them up into articles to explain our work to other scientists and colleagues. And we do this so that they can verify and replicate our work, and also use our findings as a springboard for their next set of experiments. Therefore, it's really important that our scientific articles follow a structured format so it's as clear as possible to our peers what we did in the experiment. And it follows a similar structure to the reports that we used to write in school in a science class. So we have an introduction or a background, and then we run through our methods and our results, and finally the conclusion. We then submit the article for publication in a scientific journal that we've chosen, but before it can be published, the editors will send out our article, or a draft of our article, to other scientists in the field so that they can provide feedback, so that they can review the article. This is known as peer review. Now, these scientists will have had no track record of working with us, so there's no conflict of interest. This unbiased peer review process is really important to ensure that we have done our work correctly and that we've drawn the correct conclusions from our results. It's often normal to have the scientific article sent to about 3 or 4 different reviewers, and these scientists will be experts in that particular field. And then once they've read the article, they will submit their feedback to the author. This feedback will include any concerns or any more information that they would like, and sometimes it may even include requests to redo parts of the experiment or just clarify the data and the findings around that data. Before the article can be published, the authors have to then respond to that feedback, and the reviewers then have to clarify that they're happy with the level of response of that feedback. So this process can often take months and months and months, and some articles can take over a year to get published in a particular journal. Almost unheard of that a paper would pass through this peer review process without getting any feedback at all that the authors have to respond to. Now, this feedback loop and this peer review process might seem like a very slow process, but it's really important as scientists and doctors base their decisions off of this information. And we ourselves will then base our next experiments off of these findings. So it's important that we can be confident in these findings so that we can use them as a springboard for our next set of questions. Although this process ensures scientific integrity throughout research, it creates a lot of problems when we want to translate our findings into the general population, into communities. And that's because these articles are published in scientific journals. These scientific journals are often expensive to become a member and to subscribe to, and are often only accessible if you are affiliated with an institution, a tertiary education institution such as a university. The other issue is that even if you do manage to access them, they are written in a language that is for other scientists within that field. And so because we have to follow a structure of sort of background, methods, results and conclusion, and we only have a certain number of words that we can write all our findings up in, we have a word limit, the language is very, very specific to that field. And in fact, it can be very difficult even for scientists in other fields to understand a paper from a different field. So it can almost appear as if it's written in a different language. And as an example here, I have a paper. This is the first paper that we actually reviewed in the Pomona Community Science Club. This is the original paper here, and I'll just give you a moment to read the abstract to see if you can make sense of it. So as you can see, this paper relies heavily on the reader having a huge background knowledge and insight into this very specific scientific field. And this is a huge problem for us as community members who want to actually get our hands on and access the latest discoveries in science that can change our lives. It's also a huge source of frustration for us as scientists who want to see our results translated into practice as soon as possible. So this is why we at the Healthy Aging Community Alliance have set up the Healthy Aging News newsletter. So we take scientific articles and we translate them into a language that's fun and engaging for us to read. We then get community members to review them and provide feedback to the scientific authors so that they can actually provide more clarity around their paper, and then we publish them in our newsletter. Just like the scientific peer review process, we have members of the community who provide the peer review to make sure that the article is fun, engaging, interesting, and actually has information in it that's beneficial for the community members who are going to read it. Once the community reviewers are happy with the feedback provided by the scientists and the researchers who wrote the paper, the articles then get published on our Healthy Aging Community Alliance website. They're freely available for everyone to read. In this way, we can publish a newsletter full of the latest discoveries going on in our local area, carried out by our local researchers, that's reviewed for and by the community. We hope that our community newsletter will remove some of the roadblocks standing in the way of the community accessing local research and data that will improve their lives. My job as a science communicator is to work with the researchers and translate their original scientific article into an article that we can all understand. As a community reviewer, it is your job to then review these translated articles before we publish them in our newsletter. Once the article has been finalised and you as the community reviewers are happy with the research responses, the article then gets published online in our newsletter. We also publish the questions and the researchers' responses so that the reader can see the review process. The review itself is carried out in a friendly and informal environment at Pomona Community House, and we'll be following a semi-structured review process, and these are the questions we'll be asking of the article. Thank you for considering becoming a community reviewer, and I look forward to seeing you at the next review.